and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Paris Schutz has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at. Chicago Public Schools Chief Pedro Martinez on the new school year, the district's bus driver shortage, and making space for migrant students. 1 year since the first bus of migrants arrived in Chicago, how the humanitarian crisis developed and what happens now. Plus, local leaders and community organizers call for work permits for asylum seekers.
Happ drives one in the air, pretty well hit.
And Cubs outfielder Ian Happ teams up with an artist to capture the view from the field. And now to some of today's top stories. Activists and officials are calling attention to the skyrocketing opioid overdose death rate in Cook County as part of International Overdose Awareness Day. The Cook County Sheriff's Office says when a detainee returns to the community from jail, their risk of fatal overdose increases tenfold.
Since 2016, we have given out 7,000 Narcan kits to patients being discharged from our care. We hope that providing the opioid antidote to patients leaving the jail, we can help save their life or the life of someone else in danger.
Officials say Cermak Health Services offers the only certified opioid treatment program in a correctional facility in Illinois. But activists with the Coalition to End Money Bond say that's not enough, pointing to the 10 people who they say have died in Cook County Jail because of an opioid overdose. They've issued a list of demands to the Sheriff's Office. Workers at 11 Chicago area nursing homes are set to walk off the job on Labor Day if they can't reach an agreement with the management of Infinity Nursing Homes.
Under these conditions, 2 CNAs working the floor, at times they are laying in their urine, their feces, until the next shift comes. So they want to tell us, oh, low budget, low census. Come on, there ain't no low budget or low census for 2 CNAs. But during morning shift and PM shift, how many CNAs? 4 or 5 CNAs. Come on.
SEIU Healthcare Illinois says staff are paid substandard wages, leading to a nearly 80% turnover rate that risks the health and safety of both residents and workers. The union says the poor care has brought the nursing homes under intense regulatory scrutiny. It didn't take the Chicago White Sox long to announce new leadership. Less than 2 weeks after firing general manager Rick Hahn and president of baseball operations Kenny Williams, Sox chairman Jerry Reinsdorf has hired Chris Getz to run the ball club. Getz has served as director of player development and then assistant general manager for the team going back to 2016. As a player, he was drafted by the Sox and spent 2 of his 7 major league seasons on the South Side. 2 other takeaways from Getz's introductory news conference. 1, manager Pedro Grifol will be back next year. And with regard to the general manager search, Reinsdorf says he did not interview any other candidates before making his choice. Your wait at the DMV could be a lot shorter next time you visit. Starting tomorrow, the Secretary of State's office is implementing the Skip the Line program at the state's 44 busiest locations.
In the past, when a customer had to visit a DMV, it was impossible to know how long they would be stuck waiting in line. They would need to consider if they should take time off work, get a babysitter, or even how much coffee would be required to stay awake during their wait. That's a tax on our most valuable commodity, time.
Skipping the line means that if your visit requires you to be in person, you must make an appointment. Secretary of State Alexi Janulius says his office is encouraging customers to do more through the website, such as renewing your driver's license or replacing your license plate sticker. And for vehicle-related services like title and registration, no appointment is needed. Skip the Line is launching at all of the Chicago and suburban locations. Up next, one-on-one with the head of Chicago Public Schools, right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago Public Schools kicked off the new school year last week amid a wave of new migrant students and a sweltering heat wave. But CPS is also feeling the heat over shortages of teachers and bus drivers. Now in the hot seat is school CEO Pedro Martinez. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brandis.
So CPS, you say that you all enroll 2,000 to 3,000 English language learners on average every year. This year you also have the addition of at least 2,000 migrant students. How are you meeting the additional language needs, but also the mental health needs of these new arrivals?
No, absolutely, Brandis. So one of the things that I'm very proud of is just the infrastructure we built in the district over the last several decades. Every year we've embraced 2,000 to 3,000 new English language learners in our system. We have one of the largest in the country with over 70,000 students. So we have almost 2,200, we actually have 3,000 certified bilingual teachers. We have over 2,000 classrooms with transitional bilingual programs and another 3,000 ESL certified teachers. So the challenge for us really is that migrants are coming all over the city. We're working closely with the city, so sometimes we do see children that will show up in neighborhoods or schools that don't have these programs. And so that's the bigger challenge, but we actually have a large infrastructure. We feel confident we can serve the children. Of course, as you said, academics is just one challenge that these families have, and so partnering with the city to get them other supports, whether it's mental health, healthcare. Of course, our families are very transient, so they move from pre-shelter to shelters, sometimes to other transitional housing. So those are the challenges that we're seeing more. But our teachers have embraced these families, and what's great is I'm even seeing parents enrolled in after-school programs themselves, taking ESL classes, and so hopefully over time they'll be part of our community, and we'll be able to continue to support them.
When that is the case, that maybe some schools just don't have enough multicultural and multilingual staff and teachers to work with those students, are those families redirected to a school that does have the supports they need?
Yeah, so Brandon, so that's the challenge because, we definitely have the programs in the city for us to serve those families. Sometimes the families get attached to a school. So that is a tough conversation to have with the family. And of course, the family sometimes is asked to move just because they're moving from one housing unit to another. And so those are conversations that we are having with families now. But one of the things, like I said, we're very blessed to have a district that has such a large infrastructure. And so even as families are moving, we can find schools that meet their needs.
So on the subject of the teacher shortage that so many schools and school districts are experiencing, you wrote that CPS is starting this school year with historically high levels of staffing. How would you describe or quantify your teacher shortage now?
Yeah, so our vacancy rate, Brandis, is going to be hitting just close to 4%. One of the lowest we've had in several years. We've also added many more teaching positions, even as our enrollment declined over the last 4 to 5 years. So what I'm seeing is smaller class sizes in many of our schools, especially in our highest poverty neighborhoods. Of course, now with our new asylum seekers, we've also we've made sure that we had enough capacity for those children as well. So compared to other large districts, we actually are faring very well. We actually have in our classrooms today 500 more teachers today than we ever had, and compared to last year and previous years, with slightly less students. So I believe we're in a good place now. There will be individual schools that sometimes we will have higher vacancy rates. We do a lot of hand-holding with those schools, providing them long-term, other resources to help them as we find those teachers.
What would you say you did to be able to get that rate down to 4%, so low? Yeah,
so one of the things that I'm proud of, Brandis, is that we have, first of all, some of the highest starting salaries in the nation for our teachers, in the low 60s. And our average salaries are much higher than that. Now, by the way, I say that unapologetically because our teachers deserve to be well compensated. They are working really hard. And we also had, this last year, we put so many additional resources and supports that not only supported our children, but also our teachers. So I'll give you an example. Every school now has freed up intervention teachers. Before this, teachers who had children that were below grade level, that were struggling, well, they had to really, work on those issues by themselves. Now we have intervention teachers. We have academic coaches in our highest poverty schools. So these are schools that have newer teachers that need more support. Every school now has after-school programs, sometimes the teachers themselves or with partners. So we're creating a better environment for teachers to be set up for more success. We're seeing, because of that, higher morale. We're seeing higher retention rates, and we're attracting more teachers to want to join our system.
So after the first week of classes, obviously hundreds of Chicago students, it's reported, including those with disabilities, are still waiting for bus routes because this has been a challenge for districts, not just this year, last year as well. What are you doing to fix this problem, particularly for the most vulnerable students?
Yeah, so last year, we made the decision to try to transport everybody, and so what was the result of that? We had over 3,000 students that were on routes that were an hour or longer each way. And that was extreme, including many that were over 90 minutes. We had thousands of students that we couldn't transport right at the beginning of the school year because, again, we had so many students. The board made a very difficult decision. They changed the policy a year ago. We gave warning to all of our families that this policy was changing, prioritizing our diverse learners and our students that are homeless. So we did make the tough decision this year to really start with them first. So what has been the result? We are now able to transport all of our diverse learners. New requests that we get, and we get requests throughout the year. We get them routed within 2 weeks. Average route time now is 28 minutes. And the majority that, and then the few students that are over 60 minutes, it's 60 to 65 minutes. So what we're also doing, Brent, is we're having hiring fairs. So for example, and we're increasing salaries, wages for our bus drivers. So when I started, it was $15 to $20 an hour. We raised it to 20 to 25. Now I'm happy to announce it's now $22 to $27 an hour. So what that's resulting in is we're now not losing bus drivers. Last year we stabilized. This year we're starting to gain bus drivers. So the challenge is, though, I have more children than ever with IEPs and that are also requesting transportation.
So obviously you're spending for your teachers, you're spending for your bus drivers, but there could be a looming, fiscal cliff once the pandemic funds begin to dry up. You've expanded summer school, obviously increasing staff and social workers. What is the plan?
So that is the challenge. So I did ask, my former board to give me a 3-year runway, and Brand, this year one of that runway was last year, and over the next 2 months, I'm going to be sure within community, we had amazing, we really had strong academic results. We really are going to show the community a start of a strong recovery. Year 2 is this year, and really what I want to make sure is that we really work hard to to really have a stable year for next year. So after next year, we will have that large cliff. What I want to do is make sure that we give our mayor, myself, our partners the time to advocate with Springfield, because we know that right now that the shortfall we have from the state would more than offset the losses we have from the federal funding. So really for us, it's a revenue issue and it's a state issue. But I also know Springfield, they inherited this. They didn't create this. So they're going to need time also to help us find solutions. And that's what I'm trying to, is really give us that time.
Couple seconds left. Have you heard from or asked for from Mayor Johnson a commitment about your job security?
So, Mayor and I we're developing a good relationship. I would say this, we're both aligned in vision and what we want for the district. He believes in well-funded schools. I have a contract, so it really is both of our choices, right, about what our relationship is going to evolve to. But I'm excited about his vision for funding schools, and again, we're developing a good relationship.
All right, you heard it here first. Pedro Martinez, CPS CEO, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ben.
Up next, a closer look at Chicago's migrant crisis 1 year later. Stay with us.
One year ago today, the first bus sent to Chicago by Texas Governor Greg Abbott rolled into Chicago's Union Station carrying 75 asylum seekers. A year later, more than 13,000 men, women, and children have arrived, straining the city's social safety net and, at times, exacerbating tension between Chicago's Black and Latino communities. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon joins us now with a look at how the humanitarian crisis currently facing the city developed and what happens now. Heather, take us back to August 31st of last year. How did this all begin?
Well, it began with a bus of nearly 75 people who rolled into Union Station with really not much more than the clothes on their back and maybe a few precious belongings. They arrived overnight with no warning to city officials, sending them scrambling to try to find some place for those people to stay, and fearing that it was the start of a very big problem. Now, this was part of a strategy by Texas Governor Greg Abbott to embarrass mayors of Democratic cities where immigrants are protected from federal immigration agents, and to make it more difficult for President Joe Biden to change the country's immigration rules.
Now, the immediate crisis somewhat receded from view when the cold weather set in, only to reemerge as a full-blown humanitarian crunch in April. How did city officials respond?
They responded really with panic and short-term solutions to what has proven to be a long-term crisis. When those second wave of migrants arrived, the city shelters were still full from people who arrived before the cold weather set in, which meant when those new arrivals came, the city had nowhere to put them. That started the process of sending these people to police stations where they were forced to live on floors without beds, showers, or any sort of facility to get food and to be seen and taken care of medically. Now, days before she left office, Mayor Lori Lightfoot declared a state of emergency, but it was basically up to Mayor Brandon Johnson to cope with the rest. And it very quickly, what was a problem turned into a very, very serious crisis.
Yeah, certainly a crisis I think many of us have seen if you pass by any police stations in town. You mentioned Mayor Johnson. He took office on May the 15th. How has his approach differed from former Mayor Lori Lightfoot?
Well, he has taken a much less combative approach to not just Texas Governor Greg Abbott, but fellow elected officials here in Illinois. He and Governor J.B. Pritzker have taken great pains to show the news media that they are on the same page, that they are working together to try to address this crisis. The problem is that even as the state has spent $250 million caring for the migrants and the city another $100 million, the federal government has really yet to step up to help either government care for these migrants, and that is part of what has created political problems, not just for Johnson, but also for Pritzker.
Yeah, and certainly a unified front in a way we did not see in the prior administration. Break it down for us. How many asylum seekers are still awaiting shelter?
So there are more than 6,700 people living in Chicago shelters, and that includes 10 new shelters opened by Brandon Johnson since he took office. But still, more than 2,000 men, women, and children are living out of Chicago's police stations and Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. And that has increased nearly 60% in the past 2 weeks as more buses, many with as many as 50 people on board, arrive every day in Chicago.
Is there any relief in sight for those folks living in police stations and at the airport? Where does this go next?
Well, Johnson is working to open even more shelters, including at a former Marine Corps base along the Chicago River in North Park. The city council is expected to agree to spend $1.5 million to purchase that property. And in about a month, it could house as many as 550 people. However, the city needs lots more shelters, and a proposal to open a shelter at a Hyde Park hotel drew condemnation and protests this week as residents of Hyde Park said they weren't consulted about the plan and are concerned that the shelter will attract crime and other nuisances.
Certainly a lot of heated feelings about this over the past year. Heather Sharon, thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
And you can read Heather's full coverage of this issue on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. Now, Brandis, back to you.
Nick, thank you. As we just heard, the growing migrant population in Chicago is facing a host of roadblocks to shelter, food, healthcare, and work. We take a deep dive into the issue tomorrow and Saturday on a special edition of Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. In Seeking Sanctuary, 1 year later, we talk with community organizers about what they're doing to help migrants and local leaders about what more can be done, specifically on work authorization efforts. Here's a preview with host Alex Hernandez of Univision Chicago.
Senator Villanueva, if granted, states would be the ones actually sponsoring asylum seekers for employment. What is Illinois hearing from the Biden administration?
To be honest with you, it's been an ongoing conversation. There isn't anything concrete. The reality is We have a Congress that's kind of in a deadlock on a million and one different issues, especially when it comes to immigration. It's been one of the reasons why we haven't really seen any movement on immigration-related issues. So right now, it's just a constant conversation that we're having, but also an urging on our behalf to say we need action on this. We need to see something, because otherwise we have people that are continuously going to be in the same cycle with no answers.
They've just been kicking the can?
Yeah. I mean, it's been, again, a back and forth conversation, but no definitive resolution as to if work permits are going to come, if there's going to be temporary protective status. You know, I think the White House is doing what they can, but the reality is without a Congress that is actually committed to doing something, we're all stuck in limbo.
Commissioner Quesada, do you see this faster work permits being a solution to workforce shortage?
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely an aspect. It's not a silver bullet, but what we do know is that we have shortages in many sectors of our economy, and it would be a great benefit if we had an increase in our workforce development by offering our asylum seekers a work permit. Absolutely.
Right. Alderman Vasquez, how do you handle the argument that the city needs to care first for its residents, its citizens, before taking care of the newest arrivals?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the situation and understanding what it's like being in a community where you haven't had that investment and all of a sudden government says they need to establish a shelter, we have to recognize why that sentiment is being voiced. To those who say, you know, someone is being prioritized, the challenge and what we need to do is take care of all. We need to create systems that deal with not only the new arrivals, but also with the existing population. It's why work authorization is important. And I think where I would kind of differ a little is I think it is in the White House's purview to change it. Knowing Congress is not going to move, it's about a president through executive order making the necessary changes, because if we don't have work authorizations now, we're going to continue seeing more and more buses and more new arrivals that are going to scale up exponentially the closer you get to the Democratic convention. And then they're going to label Chicago a disaster, the party disaster, and the president a disaster. So it's in everyone's best interest for those work authorizations to move quickly in order to actually bring real solution to what we're seeing right now.
Again, that was Alex Hernandez speaking with local officials in a sneak peek of Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. You can catch the special edition Seeking Sanctuary 1 year later, tomorrow night at 5:30 and Saturday at 6. An unusual friendship is resulting in some artwork with a home field advantage. Chicago Cubs outfielder Ian Happ commissioned an artist to capture the game from a player's perspective. But the artist, an Englishman, didn't know much about baseball, so Happ introduced his friend to his workplace. Producer Mark Vitale recently brought us this story. Here's another look.
Happ drives one in the air, pretty well hit deep left center. It's got a chance. Gone.
I had this experience where I would bring people down on the field that had been to 10, 20, 100 games at Wrigley Field, and they would get on the field and look back up and have this experience or this moment of awe. And to be able to capture that and some of the different perspectives that we get of Wrigley Field as players that the fans don't get. The first one was from the dugout, looking out as the fans are experiencing it from a different point of view. So that's how it started, and then we captured the batter's box view and then that kind of rounding third after a home run.
The artist Ian Happ hired, Patrick Vale, also made cityscapes and portraits of fans he's met. Vale was born in Bristol, England, and lives in Brooklyn.
I went to a Mets game and I'm always drawing wherever I go, and I did a little sketch in my sketchbook, and then I think you saw that and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, we need to get you out to Wrigley.
Vale met Happ through a mutual friend. He understood cricket, but not baseball.
Yeah, I haven't got the foggiest, or I didn't. I'm learning, you know. I mean, it's a field. I think to start with, I would call it a pitch, and Ian would pick me up on all of those little things.
Their 5-year partnership resulted in a gallery show called See What I See.
We love artwork that has a story behind it. This kind of collaboration has not been seen before.
Happ hit a pair of home runs at the first Cubs game in London. But to this product of Western Pennsylvania, there's no place like his adopted home, and a ballpark steeped in history that strikes him in different ways.
One of the most powerful ways is the people that have played here before us, you know, the Ernie Banks, the Ron Santos. Babe Ruth called a shot here, you know, to conceptualize that and to the history, the 100+ years of history at this field, And to have the opportunity to continue that on to wear the Cubs uniform is really special as a player, and then the energy that you get from the fan base. They're always here, they're always rooting for you, and they're such a positive fan base, which is so impressive.
He's glad to share Wrigley with his friend, but the artist has yet to take batting practice.
Are you teaching him how to hit it fastball?
I don't know if that's
No, we haven't got him out to take BP yet. That's something we'll have to do.
Happ will sprint into second.
And while neither the ball player nor the artist is from Chicago, each has found the city welcoming.
It's just been wonderful. Like, I'm starting to explore the city myself now through the lens of baseball and people that I meet and interview at the Cubs. I feel like I'm a bit of a detective of sorts, you know, trying to learn those stories about why people love this club so much and the city.
And just to be able to give the people that watch us and cheer for us every day kind of a look into how it is for us. We're excited to share it with everybody. It's been a long time coming.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
The art show is at Gallery Victor in River North and runs through this Saturday, September 2nd, just a few more days. So find out more about the show on our website. And that is our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.